Hello, welcome friends. It's Nico, and this week I'm going to be talking about how I deal with dysphoria. I'm going to be very upfront with you and admit quite freely that I don't always deal with dysphoria very well. I don't always deal with it at all. There are definitely times when dysphoria gets me down. So keeping that in mind, this video is really more just me sharing some ways that I try to deal with dysphoria, and I'm obviously going to try and stick with the ones that have proven successful and that are generally better and more healthy. So I've found that usually there are different triggers for my dysphoria. So one of the most important parts of dealing with any bout of dysphoria is figuring out what the trigger was and what sort of has made me start to feel uncomfortable and upset. And I found that those triggers usually fall into three categories. And I'm going to, I guess, go from least frequent to most frequent. The least frequent for me is social triggers, so people treating me in ways that are specifically gendered that I don't like and that make me upset. That can be anywhere from someone using pronouns that you don't like, or treating you in a way you don't think they would have treated you if they had been correctly gendering you. So a couple of instances that this happens to me in bathrooms all the time, going into the women's bathroom and having people look at me funny. And this has happened to me going through doors. Men don't want to hold doors for me, or they want to have women go in front of me, because chivalry is alive and well. Or once I was using a debit card that belonged to my mom and it had my mom's name on it. And the cashier running it said, "This is your mom's card, isn't it?" And I knew that she was asking me that because the name on the card was female, and she wasn't reading me as female, she was reading me as male. And I can see how that would seem like passing and it would have made me happy, but it didn't make me happy because I felt like she was legislating my gender and telling me what I should and should not be doing, which for me is more alienating and upsetting than, I guess, just getting the wrong pronouns. Anyway, in those instances, if it's people that I don't know well, usually I just get out of the situation and then I can complain about it later to my friends. It's usually all that needs to happen. People I know better, I can usually ask them to, change their behavior or use different pronouns or talk to them about the way that they're treating me. Somewhat more frequent are visual triggers. So I'll see myself or a picture of myself or my reflection in a window or something, and it won't look right to me. It won't look like the me that I have in my head, or the me that I'm trying to project outwards. And that can be very upsetting. In those situations, I will usually get out my binder. I've mentioned that I don't bind a lot, and that's usually because I don't actually have a lot of instances where a visual trigger makes me strongly dysphoric. That tends to happen if there's some event that I'm going to or someone in particular that I'm meeting. And in those situations, binding and making myself really flat definitely helps. It makes me feel like my external presentation matches a lot more what I'm feeling inside. On that same note, actually something that I like to do is to write song lyrics or poetry on my skin, usually in, black pen, just ballpoint. It might seem kind of odd, but what I think it accomplishes is that it gives me a way to modify my body, make my body say something that I'm experiencing or thinking or feeling, and it makes me feel like I'm much more in control of my body than I generally otherwise would be. My most frequent trigger is a physical trigger, so having some sensation that reminds me of the shape of my body and the way that my body interacts with space and with the world around it. And unfortunately, that can be just as simple as feeling, the fabric of my shirt on my stomach or my chest, or the fabric of my pants on my legs. And so one of the ways that I've dealt with that is, like I mentioned last week, is picking my wardrobe so that everything I wear is pretty comfortable, and not too tight fitting, because that can make me really uncomfortable. That's also the reason that I don't bind a lot, is because obviously if having something pressing against my skin makes me uncomfortable, having a binder that's really pressing against your skin can make me really uncomfortable. So I only bind when the visual trigger is stronger than the physical trigger, and binding makes me feel better than not binding, which, is pretty logical. Another way that I deal with the physical triggers for my dysphoria is to do some kind of exercise, to go for a walk, to skateboard, to run. My favorite is to swim. There is something really special about water and the kind of the way that it changes how we move, that really relaxes me and makes me feel a lot less dysphoric. And obviously that has the added benefit of, usually if you do it regularly, the physical changes in your body are going to help you with your visual triggers. Another way is if you have close friends who are, okay with physical contact, friends that you can hug and hang out with. I've actually found that there are situations in which if I'm feeling physically dysphoric, I probably won't want to, be hugging people really tightly or anything, but I might want to just be hanging out, in a situation where there's casual contact. So, if you're hanging out on the grass and, you have your head in someone's lap or someone has their head in your lap, anything where there's some physical contact that makes you feel like there's a positive interaction with the world and your body, can, I think, really help with dysphoria. Two other useful strategies for me are reading and listening to music. They're useful because they offer some form of escape from my physical body, so reading something good gets me involved in something that's something separate from myself, and I'm not thinking about my body as much. The same for music. If I'm just listening to the music, I'm not going to be thinking about my body, and that can be really, really helpful. I think that for me, actually, the biggest and most important thing, though, is that I create a lot of routines in my life, because dysphoria can be, in some ways, very unpredictable, and you never know when a trigger is going to strike you. You never know when something is going to happen that's going to make you really upset. And for me, at least, having things that I do reliably every day, that I do repeatedly, that I know are going to happen, that's really comfortable and it's really comforting. So for instance, I always have the same thing for breakfast. I've already mentioned in the video on style that I always wear the same thing on the same day of the week. There are just a lot of little things that I do, and the process of completing that routine can be physically rewarding. So that's a summary of how I deal with dysphoria in my life. I hope that it's somewhat helpful to you, or just interesting. And I look forward to talking to you all again next week.